The millionaire CEO stepped out of his luxury car, ready to begin another ordinary day of power and prestige. But just as he reached for the door, a young boy in overalls, the son of the company's janitor, suddenly raised his hand and shouted for him to stop. Shocked, the CEO froze in disbelief. Why would a poor cleaner's child dare to confront him so boldly? What happened next would not only expose a hidden truth but also shake the entire company to its core, leaving everyone questioning loyalty, humanity, and the real meaning of respect. The towering glass building of one of the city's most powerful corporations gleamed under the morning sun. Inside, thousands of employees worked tirelessly, their lives revolving around the commands of one man, the young and ambitious millionaire CEO. To many, he was the face of success. Sharp suits, luxury cars, and the authority to change people's futures with a single decision. But behind the polished walls of his empire, there were stories most people chose to ignore. Stories of those who cleaned the floors after hours, who fixed the lights when no one was watching, and who were never seen in the glossy photographs of corporate achievements. Among them was a quiet man, the janitor. Every day he arrived before dawn, mopping marble floors that would be dirtied again by footsteps of power. His son, a bright boy full of curiosity and courage, often accompanied him. Though many dismissed the boy as just the cleaner's kid, his sharp eyes noticed things that others ignored. He watched the way executives looked past his father, the way doors were closed to people who didn't wear tailored suits, and how power could blind even the smartest men. That morning seemed no different, until the CEO stepped out of his car. Confident, untouchable, and unaware, he reached for the handle as the boy suddenly stood in his path. No one could have predicted that in a matter of seconds, this child's voice would break through the walls of arrogance and fear, setting in motion an event that would expose truths the company had long buried. The street outside the headquarters was buzzing as executives in tailored suits hurried into the glass doors, clutching briefcases and coffee cups, while chauffeurs parked sleek black cars along the curb. No one paid much attention to the young boy in overalls, standing rigid near the millionaire's car. His small frame contrasted sharply with the towering building behind him, yet his presence suddenly carried an unusual weight. With one arm stretched out, palm firm and commanding, he wasn't asking, he was warning. The millionaire CEO paused, caught off guard. Accustomed to people bowing, agreeing, or at the very least stepping aside when he walked, he had never seen someone so young, so ordinary, stand against him with such determination. His polished shoes hesitated on the pavement, his hand still resting on the open car door. Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by irritation. Who was this boy to block his path? Who gave him the audacity? But the boy's eyes told a different story. They weren't the eyes of defiance for the sake of rebellion. They carried urgency, almost desperation, as though he was trying to prevent something far worse from happening. The CEO, still processing, glanced at the driver waiting inside the car, then at the bystanders who had started to notice the scene. A few employees slowed their pace, whispering under their breath about the strange interruption. The balance of power was tilting in a way that made the young millionaire deeply uncomfortable. Behind the boy, near the edge of the building, his father, the janitor, froze mid-step, horrified. He had seen his son rush forward, had seen him throw up that small hand in front of a man who could destroy their lives with a single word. His heart pounded. He knew exactly what disrespect like this could cost. He had spent years teaching his son to keep his head down, to stay invisible, to survive in a world that judged them for their skin, their class, and their silence. But here, in front of everyone, his son had done the unthinkable. The CEO's chest rose with controlled breath as he tried to mask his growing irritation with composure. He was used to controlling every narrative, every room he walked into. Yet this was different. It wasn't an angry protester or a competing businessman. It was a child. And children rarely stood in front of luxury cars shouting warnings. Something about it gnawed at him. The janitor, hands trembling, wanted to rush forward to pull his son back before things spiraled out of control. But a strange heaviness held him in place. For years he had swallowed injustice. For years he had bent his spine to keep food on the table. And now, as his son stood boldly where he never could, he felt both terror and pride swell inside him. The murmurs around grew louder. What's going on? Why's that boy blocking him? Isn't that the cleaner's kid? Some chuckled under their breath, already framing the scene as a foolish act. Others looked uneasy, sensing the weight of something bigger than they could yet understand. The boy didn't move. His hand stayed firm, his voice steady as he repeated words that only grew stronger in their silence. Don't get in the car. He wasn't just warning. He was pleading. His small frame stood like a wall between immense wealth and an unseen danger. But no one could yet comprehend what he knew. The CEO looked around, realizing all eyes were now on him. For the first time in years, he wasn't the untouchable figure, admired and envied. He was the man being stopped by a janitor's son. And in that moment, with the hum of the city around them and whispers rising in the air, he realized this encounter would not be forgotten. The CEO's polished shoes froze on the pavement. His hand, still resting on the car door, suddenly felt heavy. The boy's warning echoed in his mind, louder than the murmurs of the crowd, louder than the hum of the city. Don't get in the car. For a split second, arrogance tried to win. He wanted to shove the child aside to prove that no one, especially a janitor's son, had the right to stop him. But something about the boy's trembling hand, his unwavering eyes, rooted him to the ground. It wasn't defiance for attention. It was urgency, desperation, a child risking humiliation to save someone who barely saw him as human. The driver tapped the steering wheel impatiently, waiting. The employees whispered louder, phones in hand, recording. The janitor stood frozen, heart hammering in his chest, every muscle screaming to pull his son away. Yet some deeper instinct kept him still. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then, a deafening blast tore through the air. The luxury car erupted into a fireball of smoke and shattered metal. Windows of the towering building rattled. People screamed, ducking to the ground as debris scattered across the pavement. The CEO stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock, heat licking at his face. Where he had been about to sit just moments ago was now a twisted wreckage, flames clawing at the sky. The crowd gasped. The driver inside had no chance. The CEO's legs buckled, realization slamming into him with unbearable force. That boy, this child, had just saved his life. The janitor dropped to his knees, tears streaming as he pulled his son close, both in fear and overwhelming pride. The boy's small frame shook, but his eyes never left the CEO. He hadn't blocked the car for respect, for rebellion, or for recognition. He had done it because he saw what no one else did. A wire, a device, a detail others ignored. He had acted despite knowing the world would laugh at him. The millionaire, covered in ash and disbelief, looked at the boy not as a janitor's son, not as a child from lower class, not through the lens of color or poverty. For the first time, he saw him as something far greater, the reason he was still alive. The whispers in the crowd turned from mockery to awe. Every eye was wide, every phone still recording, every heart pounding. And at the center of it all stood a boy who had defied everything the world told him he couldn't be, powerful, brave, and undeniable. When the flames were finally extinguished, the air carried both the bitter scent of smoke and the undeniable weight of truth. The CEO stood among his employees, his face pale, his tailored suit smeared with ash. He had nearly stepped into death, blinded not by lack of awareness, but by the arrogance that he was untouchable. Yet the person who saved him wasn't a bodyguard, a fellow executive, or one of the countless people who praised his wealth. It was a child he had never once acknowledged. The boy, exhausted but unwavering, clung to his father's arm. The janitor held him close, his own tears wetting his cheeks, silently praying gratitude for a son the world overlooked, but who had just proven more valuable than anyone could have imagined. The crowd of employees who moments before had sneered and whispered, now stared in stunned silence. Phones trembled in their hands, capturing a moment that none of them would ever forget. In that silence, the CEO's entire world shifted. He realized how blind he had been, not only to the danger hiding inside his own car, but also to the quiet truths around him. The janitor and his son were no longer invisible. Their courage had lit a fire brighter than the explosion. And that flame could not be ignored. For the first time, the CEO walked toward the boy and knelt down, leveling himself with the child who had just saved his life. His lips trembled, words caught in his throat, but his eyes carried something they never had before: respect. Deep, unshakable respect. The kind that wealth, power, or status could never demand, but only an act of undeniable bravery could earn. In the days that followed, news of the event spread beyond the walls of the company. Headlines told of a CEO whose life had been saved not by his security, not by his fortune, but by the quick thinking of a janitor's black son. The world watched as the narrative flipped. Where once there had been mockery, now there was admiration. Where there had been dismissal, now there was recognition. But the true impact wasn't in the media coverage or the praise. It was in the silent, personal shift of hearts. Employees began to see the janitor and his son differently, not as shadows in the background, but as voices in lives that mattered. The CEO himself began questioning his own values, what it truly meant to be powerful, what it meant to lead, and what it meant to be human. And as viewers hear this story now, the same question lingers. How many times do we overlook those who see what we cannot? How many voices have we silenced simply because they did not look or live like us? The boy's courage was not just an act of instinct, it was a lesson, a reminder that wisdom, bravery, and truth are not bound by wealth, titles, or skin color. They can come from anywhere, from anyone, even from the very people the world ignores. So the next time you find yourself dismissing someone because of their race, their background, or their place in society, ask yourself, what if the life-saving truth you need is hiding in the very voice you're refusing to hear? Because sometimes the difference between life and death, ignorance and awareness, hate and humanity, rests in the courage of the ones we least expect.